Welcome. My name is Caitlin Domer with Virtual Coaching Sales, and today we're going to be talking about my 7-step formula for closing high-ticket items with confidence and authenticity. I find that especially for women, we are not trained in how to sell well, which is in a non-pushy, masculine, win-lose sort of feel. This actually works for men too, but I created it for myself, and it worked really well. It continues to work very well. And so I find that it's a really refreshing way to approach high-ticket sales. So what we do is virtual coaching sales is high-ticket sales. We work with coaches, consultants, people who are selling high-dollar service items, not typically products or widgets. So this is definitely more for service-based industry. But that being said, I think that the principles apply to almost anybody. So you're welcome to go ahead and download our kind of cheat sheet, fill in the blank handout. It'll be in our Facebook group. If you're not a member of our Facebook group, you can Google $1 Million Sales Process, or I guess search for it on Facebook and it'll pop that up. We'll also include a link for it in the replay so that you can go ahead and join our Facebook group and get that cheat sheet. So the 7 steps, I'll just give them to you all at once, and then we're going to go through each one individually. And the one we're going to focus most of our time on is number 4, which is discover. But the first one is establish the relationship. So you want to make sure that people know, like, and trust you. At the end of the day, that's why people buy. Number 2, set the intention. This is a little bit unique for me because what I do is I really come from a place of love and service, and I want people to feel that. And so when I'm sharing the agenda for the call, it always starts with hey, I'm here to love and to serve you and to help find what you need and promote your needs. And so I really put them first at the very beginning of the call. The third one is establish credibility. So sorry, 1 is build the relationship. I'm looking at my own cheat sheet and it doesn't have the answers filled in. Number 3 is establish credibility. This one's really important because they need to see you as the expert. This is where you're building trust, either through the education that you have, the education that you're giving them, what you have been able to accomplish, etc. So this is a really important view and opportunity for you to show why you're the expert. Number 4 is the discover stage, and we're going to talk about the 6 points that really need to be in every single sales conversation, even if it's just in passing in the street or you're on multiple phones. These 6 points absolutely need to be covered if you're going to close any deal. Number 5, educate to the need and educate to the solution. So it's kind of flip sides of giving them education so that they feel like they are the ones who are suggesting this is the best fit for them. Number 6 is recommend a solution. So telling them what this looks like if you want to move forward with you and you're being the expert. And then last is describe next steps. And this one you would think would be, well, close the deal. But I actually find that you don't really need to close the deal if you're doing this well. And so we want to make sure that you have set the necessary groundwork so that by the time you get to the end of the call, people are asking you, well, what does this look like for us to move forward? How do we work together? So number 1, going back to the beginning, build the relationship. We want them to know you. We want them to like you. So I have a couple different exercises that I can share with you over time of how I make sure that I ground myself and I come from that place of love and authenticity. And I have to admit, when I first started virtual coaching sales, I could not sell anything. I hated to sell. I was afraid of the telephone, which is really ironic in my perspective now, given what I do. But it really has it's been an amazing journey for me. And the way that I've been able to accomplish that is really by grounding myself in the fact that when I get on the phone with someone, I'm not trying to close the deal. I'm not trying to take their money from them. What I'm trying to do is really learn about who they are, hear their story, get to know where their pain points are, what their problems are, and then see if I can bridge that with a solution and get them to the other side where they really want to be anyway. So when you can come to any sales conversation with that perspective, and you're always looking for the opportunity. And for me, when I get on a sales conversation, I don't always know where it's going to end up. Some people, I think it's going to be a great fit, and I talk to them, and I just feel a real mismatch of energy, and I will not recommend that they work for us. Other people, I assume we're getting on the call so we can be referral partners and share flies back and forth, and then they're like, well, I need your services after hearing what we do. So really just be open to where God and the universe leads you on a sales conversation. But the biggest thing is you just really want them to get to know them. And the fastest way to get somebody to know and like you is to simply listen to them. So those first 30 seconds of any conversation are critical. You need to get them to open up to you. So I like to say that good salespeople talk about 80% of the time and they listen about 20% of the time, but great salespeople reverse that. They listen 80% of the time and they only talk about 20% of the time. And most of that talking is asking questions and then maybe walking them through the solution. So you want to listen. And if you can listen with love and empathy and kind of reflect back what you're hearing, that's going to be so, so powerful. And it'll get them to feel like, hey, we're starting a relationship here. So the next point that you see, you want them to share their story with you. So I am a big fan of story and the power of story for getting to know somebody, even if you're in a B2B relationship, right? Even if you're in a big corporate environment, selling is personal. Like it comes to you as an individual and them as a person. There might be lots of individuals that are interacting, but talking about story is a really easy way to transition and get them talking about themselves. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What brought us here today would be a really great way to start the conversation if they started this conversation. If you did, then it might be something like, well, I just wanted to get to know you better and hear a little bit more about your experiences with whatever industry you're in. Sudare, I think you are in the health industry. So it might be, tell me about your experiences with health and start them talking about their health journey there. Number two is set the intention. So like I said, the first part is always the most critical part. It's also typically the hardest part, especially if you're doing something like cold calling. Now, we don't advise cold calling by itself, but let's say you do say, I saw you on Facebook, I'd love for us to connect and see if I can serve you. It's essentially a cold call. And so you really need to put yourself in there. So my biggest thing that, again, coming back to love and service, is you don't want to position yourself as a competitor. So remember when I mentioned that sales is typically outlined as a kind of a win-lose relationship. And either I win and I get the sale and I take your money, or they win and they get to walk out the door without buying anything. It's very antagonistic and I really don't appreciate it, especially when I'm the buyer, right? So if you think about this as a game of tennis, where usually the salesperson's on one side of the net and the buyer's on the other side of the net, I want you to take yourself around and put yourself on their side of the net. And together, both of you are looking forward at the obstacle, at the challenges that that other person is facing. And you're really trying to overcome those obstacles and challenges together as a team. So I tend to use a pattern interrupt, right? So because it's a sales conversation, and even when you say it's not a closed sales conversation, it typically is. They know it, you know it, and so it's sometimes just best to kind of clear the air and get out of the way. So I use something like, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that God or the universe brought us together for a reason, and over the course of this conversation, I'd like for us to discover what that is. If I can be of service to you, excellent. I'll walk you through what our programs and services look like. If not, I'd be happy to connect you to somebody else who can serve you better. And so that is really what you want to do, is you want to set this intention, put the agenda out there so that they know what to expect from the call. And then it kind of takes their defenses down and allows them to open up with you a little bit more and say, oh, yeah, it's a sales conversation. At the end of it, she's going to talk to me about her sales pitch, but in the meantime, I can kind of share where I'm at. Number three, establish credibility. So we talked about trust, and you do that by having confidence. Now, when I was first getting started, my business partner at the time was like, Caitlin, you just need more confidence. And I'm like, all right, great, Nate. How do I get more confidence, right? It's not just something I can fake it till I make it, right? And so I realized that confidence is really a formula, and that formula is confidence. One, you actually need to be good at what you're doing. So if you think you are decent at what you do, get to be the best, right? You should feel confident that you are the absolute best at whatever your niche is. And then that confidence will result in a conviction. And that conviction is that I know that I can help these people. I know that I can serve you. I know that what I'm selling you is of value to you. So when you have confidence and conviction, that gives you the confidence to go out, to start cold calling people, to reach out on Facebook, to start those conversations that's going to result in a close. So you need to absolutely start from a place of conviction that you are the best and that you can serve this person, and that's going to absolutely flow through you to the other person. The other thing that I like to do as I'm establishing credibility is share past experiences. So when I can say, yeah, we've sold $3 million worth of new revenue for our clients, that means something, right? When I was first starting out, it was like, well, I really, really think we're going to do a great job for you. And it was a lot harder to sell. But now that I have a track record of success, the track record speaks for itself. Now, you don't want to just like name drop all over the place, but you can say, based on my experience, this is what I found. Or historically, this is what you can expect. Or with my other clients, we tend to, or in our industry, it's pretty common that. And so by dropping those key introductory phrases, you're establishing your credibility as the industry leader, and they know that they can trust you to make a powerful recommendation. All right, step number 4 is discovery. And this one I think has shifted a little bit since I first made this handout. It says GMCD. It's now actually GMCPDB, right? So what we're going to go through is these are the 6 critical pieces of any sales conversation. Even if you're not like actively thinking about all 7 steps, you need to think about these 6. So just go ahead and write them down, put them on your bulletin board. It's really 3 sets of pairs. The first set of pairing is their goals. What are their goals? What do they want? And then the flip side of that is the why, it's their motivation. Why is that important to you? So it sometimes, and it doesn't always come from one first and then the other. So for example, let's say somebody was interviewing me a couple of years ago. Well, what do you want, Caitlin? What do you want from your business? I probably would have said, well, I want to bring my husband home because he works 60 hours a week at a sucky corporate job. I would love to make enough money that he can come home and just be with our family full time and help me raise our babies together. So that would be the motivation. And then you would want to take them back into a financial goal. All right, so Caitlin, what does that look like for you? How much money do you need to make? At that point, I think it was like, well, we need $10,000 in savings and I want $3,000 a month. It was pretty low. You're like, okay, perfect. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get you to that point, right? So it could be the opposite. Some people come and they tell me, well, I want to make $1 million. And I'm like, the first question I always ask is like, well, how much money have you ever made? If you haven't actually made $1 million, then right, we need to talk about what that actually entails, because it's a lofty aspiration, but as somebody who has made $1 million, I can tell you there's a big difference between making $1 million and keeping $1 million. So what is it that means for them? So you take them from that financial goal of X dollars per month or whatever it is that they want to achieve, and then you take it back into the motivation. Well, what would $1 million mean to you if you were able to generate that? Again, if you're in the health industry, it might be, I want to lose 15 pounds so that I can feel more sexy, right? So there's always the goal, the what, and the motivation, the why. And you need to know both in order to speak powerfully to their future direction. The next one is challenges and pain. Challenges is the what. What's stopping them from reaching their goal? And the pain is, why is that a problem? How is that challenge showing up for them in their life? So if you can get to that point, now it's like, all right, perfect. So you want to lose 15 pounds so that you can feel more sexy. What's the problem? Why haven't you been able to get there? For some of them, it might be like, well, I have a chronic disease like diabetes. Or for some, it's like, well, I just had a daughter, I just had a kid, and I have a toddler, and I don't have any time to work out, right? So it'll tell you their challenges and what their problem is. And then the pain is usually a reflection of the motivation. Well, I don't feel sexy. I don't look good in my clothes. I can't fit into my pre-maternity pants, right? Whatever that piece looks like. And usually the more expensive the pain, the more you can charge for your services. I mean, it's really that simple, because at the end of the day, money is just a placeholder for value. So you need to provide as much value as you want to receive, right? So if somebody wants to make $1 million, perfect. How are you going to give somebody at least $1 million worth of value? So for me, I produced $3 million worth of new revenue, and then I earned my $1 million for myself. So there always needs to be this balancing act between the value you provide and the value that you receive in terms of monetary compensation. So for their pain points, so right, I work with sales processes, services, I build sales teams. And usually people are coming to me telling me, well, I'm leaving money on the table. I have more leads than I can follow up with, and I really need somebody who can give a personal phone call and make all of my leads feel safe, secure, and nurtured. And we're like, okay, perfect. So estimate how many leads are we talking about? How much money are you leaving on the table? So for example, the newest gal that we just brought on, Stephanie Nicholas, she's amazing. She was telling me, well, I sent out this blast and I got 700 people asking to speak with me, and I can't speak to any of them, but I think that we can probably pull out at least $200,000 out of that, just those 700 leads, if I had somebody to follow up with them. So, right, she knows that she's leaving $200,000 worth of money on the table by not having the service that I provide. So can I charge a lot of money at this point? Yes, I can, right? So understanding their challenges and their pain, their what is the problem and why is that a problem, and how much money or time is the other resource, is that costing them. So then we get into the D and the B, and these ones aren't necessarily flip sides, but you do want to know both. The D is the desired solution. Well, where would you like some help? Right? What would it look like? And some people know, and the people are like, well, I'm coming to you because you're a health coach. I want you to help me lose weight, excuse me. Or they're coming to me, hey, I need help with my sales. I don't know what it looks like. Can you give me a recommendation? Which then provides a fabulous little segue into educating on what they need and the solution that we provide. So D is a great one. The other thing is the B, the budget, right? How much do they have to spend? So if we're talking to somebody and we're talking about their sales process, and they've already made $1 million, let's say last year, then they probably have a bigger budget and a bigger cash flow reserve that they can afford to spend and invest in a sales team or a sales process. If, again, going back to the health coaching example, if it's a mom who just has 2 kids, there's probably not going to be as much budget available. So then you have to always do this interplay, and this is true of me when I'm selling $250,000 deals, and you when you're selling whatever your packages and prices are, is how do you balance the value you're providing with the hours that you're spending? So what I always suggest is you have a package, and that package includes value that you don't have to spend time on, right? So very rarely when I say, well, what's the end result that you would like to achieve together? Very rarely is it, well, I want at least 15 hours of your time. It usually comes to, well, I want to lose those 15 pounds. If it takes you 1 hour to lose those 15 pounds, or it takes you 50 hours to help that person lose those 15 pounds, excuse me. At the end of the day, that person doesn't care how much time you're spending with them. They only care about that end result that you're trying to achieve for them. So if you can reverse engineer your process and you can come up with this signature process that allows you, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3. And every time you do step 1, step 2, and step 3 in this order, the way that I've outlined, you always get this end result. Then you can start systematizing. Then you can create videos, you can create curriculum, you can do training events, you can do a group session. So there are a lot of ways that you can set up a package that gets an end result, and then it helps you in the meantime take down how many hours you're actually spending. And what's ironic is that as you create this signature 1, 2, 3 process, and you have videos and you have curriculum and you have all this group support, what you're actually developing is more value. So typically you can charge more for a package where you're spending fewer hours because you have all of this additional support that that person is getting. And when you're listing out the features, it's not, well, you get 15 hours with me. It's, well, you get this package and this support group and this jumpstart kit and this cheat sheet and this meal plan guide or whatever it is for you. And you happen to get 2 hours broken up into 15-minute segments over however long you do it, right? So do you see how this works? You can actually increase your value while decreasing your time, which is going to give you a much fatter profit margin. And that's what you want. So getting into their budget, it could be something as simple as, well, tell me rough numbers. How much are you thinking of spending on this project, if it's a project? Or kind of what can you afford? Or what would that, this is my favorite, what would that be worth to you? So if you are talking about something like health, which is always a little bit harder, then you can simply say, Well, what would it be worth to you if we were able to help you achieve that goal and you felt sexy, right? And so that is a way for them to quantify how much value you're providing for them. So that'll make sense. I'll stop for questions at the end, but really want to get through this quickly. So the step number 5 is educate to the need. Now this one becomes actually really easy, and this one I was doing without even thinking about it, but it's in a very real sense, this education portion becomes my favorite because you're kind of explaining to them, you're helping understand, are they the right client for you? So it gives you a chance to share your expertise. You can share stories and case studies. So for me, what I've found is that I use my education section to sort of qualify and educate my expertise at the same time. So I'll say something like, fantastic. Well, the biggest question I have for you is leads. So our team can handle anywhere from 50 hot leads to 1,000 cool leads in a month period of time. How many leads are you generating every month? Because lead flow is a really important qualifier for me. And it's also educating them on, okay, once you have a sales team, you're going to need to start generating anywhere from 200 to 600, 700 leads every single month. Can you handle that? I'm going to explain my exact plan. Like, okay, so what we've found, right, I'm using that phrase to help establish credibility. What I've found is that when I'm working with my clients, that generally we start in phase 1, and this is fairly new for us, but it helps me to explain our services. So phase 1, the individual is a celebrity, they want to be closing their own deals, or they don't know how to systematize their close so that somebody else can take over. They really need an appointment setter who can just be qualifying and educating so that they know when they get on the phone, they're going to increase their conversion rate for a higher dollar value. While we're in phase 1, we're going to be developing all of those processes and systems. We're going to create your packages. We're going to set up your pricing sheet. We're going to set up your sales pages. We're going to set up your scripts. A lot of S's, evidently. And as a result of all of that work, we're going to create a process where in phase 2, we can hire a team leader, a closer, an additional appointment setter, whatever we feel like we need. And at that point, we're going to have the infrastructure set up so that somebody else can close for you. And then at that point, because we know that phase 2 is rather expensive, our clients are typically paying us anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 a year, that you want to bring that profit margin back down. So in phase 3, after we've hit your $1 million a year goal, then we can scale it back and move our fee to a flat rate and renegotiate compensation models. So I use that whole arc, and I mean, you could, if you have that signature process, that 1, 2, 3 that I talked about, and you can create an infographic for that, so much the better. So you want to educate to the need, help them to see all the possible pitfalls and the ideal outcomes. So if you keep going down this path without any support, here's what I've found. Now, what I'm also doing at this point is proactively teaching them why all of their potential objections are actually reasons to move forward. So before you, because you haven't made a pitch, right? You haven't tried to sell them anything. So their defenses are still down. You can still talk to them in a very real manner. So what you could say is, let's go back to the health coaching industry. So what I found is that typically I will get on this call with you or a prospect or somebody, a client, and I will tell them this is what you need. And I will explain why it's really powerful to have a coach and support and accountability and an action plan, etc. And then they say, well, I can't afford it. And so as a result, they say, okay, well, we're going to touch base in 3 months, or we're going to touch base in 6 months. And they think that they can do it by themselves because I just gave you a really awesome plan. But what we find is that in 3 months or in 6 months, the problem hasn't gone away. In fact, usually it's exacerbated. Usually they're heavier than they were when we talked. Usually their blood pressure is higher than when we talked. Usually they have less time to make this a priority than when we first talked. And so what we really want to talk to is, how can we make this enough of a priority with your budget so that in 3 to 6 months you have success stories and case studies of how amazing you look and feel which then, right, there's always ways that you can monetize looking and feeling good, right? You can ask for a promotion. You can apply for a different position, right? There's a lot of ways that money will come back in when you're feeling powerful and sexy, right? So you're overcoming their money objection before they've even raised the objection. And that will stick in their heads that when you get to the presentation and you're talking about the solution, they already have a little voice in their head answering the problem that they're setting before you. And I think the biggest thing that is not quite yet in the document is for objections, just remember that objections are typically the best reason for somebody to move forward with you. So if they tell you they don't have enough time, that's a reason why they need you. If they tell you they don't have enough money, that's a reason that they need you. So find how you can kind of judo flip their objection into the reason that they have to move forward with you. And I also put the 4 most important words in sales are so that you can. You always need to speak to the benefit, not the features. Like I said, people could care less about the features. They do not care how much time you're giving them. They do not care how many worksheets or cheat sheets you're giving them. They care about the end result. So you have to talk about the end result and the benefits that will provide for them. So yes, I can talk about money, and that's very easy in my particular industry, but I still need to take it back to motivation and benefits. So yeah, I can double or triple somebody's sales next year, but what does that mean for them, right? It's saving them time. They don't have to get on sales calls. It's allowing them to scale in a more powerful way. We get to increase their prices as a result of this system that we put in place. All these different things, and I'll go through a pretty long list with them, but you always need to tie it back to their motivations. Remember in step 4 when we figured out what those motivations were, so for Stephanie, she wants to build sandcastles on the beach with her 9-month-old, 10-month-old daughter, right? And so building a sales team was going to allow her to spend more time on the beach and less time on the telephone. So for you, it's always going to be about connecting those dots between what you can do and how that's going to allow your client to get what they want, right? That's the biggest thing you need to remember about sales. Number 6, recommend a solution. Now, I have, there's this program called How to Fascinate. I think her name is Sally Hogshead. It's a very unusual last name, but you can go to howtofascinate.com and take their little assessment. I think if you buy the book's only like $16 or $17, and you get a code to take it. I would recommend that way, because if you go to the website, I think it's like $35 to take it. So buy the book, use the code, find out how you are attractive, how you appeal to people. For me personally, when I took it and why I liked it, right, my primary was power. I communicate with confidence, and my secondary was passion. So I connect through emotion. And when those two intersected, my archetype was the ringleader. So when I sell, I'm the ringleader. So for me, it works really well for me to recommend, right? Based on what you're telling me and what we've talked about today, here's what I'm going to recommend. I'm going to recommend that you start in phase 1, or I'm going to recommend that you start in phase 2. And you kind of walk through how the offer works. And I tend to like 2, maybe 3, but 2 is better. And you can walk through how it'll benefit them, why it's your best option. You can say, based on what I'm hearing, this is what I would recommend. How does that sound to you? Or if your personality type is on the other side of the quadrant, you can also do what we call a self-select option. So, all right, well, we have 3 different tiers. You can have me do it for you, we can do it with you, or you can do it by yourself. And the do-it-yourself option is $500 or $1,000. And the done with you option is $5,000 to $10,000. And the done for you option is $20,000 to $50,000, right? So you have these 3 different tiers, and then you can say, based on what I've described, which one feels like the right fit for you? And so you can get them to say, well, I really want the done for you option, but I don't know if I can afford $50,000, so let's go with the done with you option at 10. Perfect. Okay, then you describe next steps. Now, I would say you've already made or lost the sale at this point. They're either saying yes or they're saying no. And people are like, well, what about objections? And they kind of freeze up when they think about objections, because they know as a buyer, right, this is when defenses go up and people are going to hit a wall and I'm going to have to overcome them, and it feels like you get back in that antagonism. So if you feel yourself getting back into a defensive posture and you feel yourself going head to head with the client, then you know you're in the wrong energy space, and you need to bring yourself back into a place of collaboration and support and service. And the biggest thing I think to remember is that people will be asking you questions for two different reasons. So they're either asking questions that will validate the yes they've already said to themselves, right? So their heart has said yes, and they just need you to give you the details so that they can say yes mentally and feel like this is a good, rational decision. Or they've already said no, and they're just looking for ways to push you aside and get you to say the wrong answer so that they can be off the hook. So there's a part that you need to feel into that, but at the end of the day, if you feel comfortable, you can even just ask them, right? If they keep asking you question after question after question, you just don't know, like, what's going on here? Say, like, you can actually just stop them, like, whew, wow, I feel like it's an interrogation. Let me just stop you for a moment. Like, what are we really trying to get to? And so sometimes if I've done a lot of work with somebody, and let's say it's around, they say, well, I just can't afford it. Sometimes what we'll do is we try to, what's called isolate the objection, and I'll say, okay, so if we could come up with a system where the money worked with your cash flow and with your budget, and you felt like, oh, I can make this happen financially, is that the only thing that we're addressing here? Or would there be other things that you would want to talk through as well? Because it really stinks if you bend over backwards and discount your prices and set up a payment plan and do whatever else that it's going to look like. And then they say, well, I have to get my husband's permission first, or I just don't have time for it right now, or I'm going on vacation and I don't really want to start this right now. It feels icky and yucky, and you just want to bang your head against a wall. So always to make sure that you isolate that. So number 7 should only come when you feel like you're both in alignment for moving forward. So then you can say something like, so let's talk about next steps. Assuming we're going to move forward together in some capacity because either I really like you, I feel like there's great energy here, or I believe in your mission and I sincerely want to help you, this is what's going to happen next. I'm going to send over, we're going to collect your credit card today, or I'm going to send you over the first invoice. You can send me a check. Once that comes through, we'll sign the contract, and then we'll schedule our time. And then I usually like to schedule, if they've said yes, even if they can't put it on their credit card until tomorrow or Friday or whatever payday is or whatever that looks like, I always like to schedule our next step. In fact, there should always be a schedule, unless they have flat out said, no, I will never work with you, and they hang up on you. So always, always, always schedule a callback. If it's to close the deal, then you just plan on taking it to the next step. I will say, if you have a conversation and they haven't given you a clear reason as to why they're booking a secondary call instead of making a decision today, find out what that is. All right, so why aren't we meeting within the day? So for me, with a high-end purchase, I would want to talk to my husband. That's totally legit. So say, okay, well, when do you think you'll get a chance to speak with him? Probably tonight. Okay, well, what I'd like to do is find a time for you and your husband to meet with me either tomorrow or on Saturday if you work, where we can talk through this and make sure this is the right fit for your family. When you get on that second phone call, you're not selling the first person, you're selling the second person, you're selling the spouse, you're selling the other decision maker. Because the first person's always sold enough that they've brought that person to the phone call. Other things, let's say it's a money issue and they have to get their money issue together. I would send them some sort of mindset work or a abundance homework sheet or some sort of input that's going to change the conversation in their head so that the output is going to be different on the second phone call. So no new input, no new output. So you want to make sure that something changes between the first call that you have with them and the second call that you have with them. And then at the end of the day, just keep in mind, the only tool you're ever going to need to overcome any objection is love, right? So you start with love, you ground yourself in love, and then at the end of the day, you have to root yourself back in love again, because you never know how these sales conversations are going to go. And I always remind myself, I can't win a deal that God hasn't promised me. I can't lose a deal that he has. So it kind of takes some of my pressure off my shoulders when I'm going into a sales conversation, is that at the end of the day, this really isn't about me at all. I am just a channel for God doing his work through me in the world. If I can support this person who comes to me, great. If not, I need to just encourage them and put them in contact with somebody else. And that's been an incredibly rewarding referral program. I love sending people to my referral partners because then they send people right back to me. So absolutely just let yourself be present in the moment. Don't think about the money. Don't think about it. Certainly don't come with a scarcity mindset, right? If you're like, oh my gosh, I need cash, I need to close this deal today or we're going to die, you need to just stop right there and clear all of that out and get to a place where you are absolutely believing that God is taking care of you 100% of the time, no matter what happens on this phone call, or you are going to freak that person out and they are going to run as fast as they can away. So you need to always come from abundance and confidence and faith, and then that will be reciprocated when you're on the call with that other person. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll open it up for questions. All right?